which is most of the time.
I always
That's good.
bust out my computer to go to the GoToMeeting. It's the worst. Thank you for working with me.
I had a house guest who knew all about this stuff. It was so nice having him, but I think he'll never come back.
Yeah, well,
This conference will now be recorded, and my iPad are not functioning.
You guys say
The only
something.
password is.
Hello?
Testing, testing, testing. Can you hear us?
You there?
Yes.
Yes.
I can hear you.
All
Can't see
right.
you
We're
yet.
working on the visual settings.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to drop it about 6:30 for a previous commitment.
All good. I was trying to keep this to 90 minutes anyway, so.
I have
We'll see.
to skate out at about 6:10.
Perfect.
Right,
It's okay. We want to be efficient anyway. If we can just get the camera going.
Baby,
Let me fire it up on my here. Let's see. Let me think about this for a second. All right,
As long as
LPC.
it's recorded, we're good, right?
Yeah,
From
but
an
we
audio perspective, Christine?
I think
Yeah.
so, yeah.
but we just have to get Karen in. Yeah, maybe it'd be actually more stable without the video.
Yeah.
I don't see Karen. That's the one thing. We gotta have Karen.
Yes, we have Karen.
that's rather
Or-
important.
Yes.
Might be a short meeting.
Won't have to worry about 90 minutes.
Or without Karen, yeah, that's
So
such a while.
wild. Is that, it's not right up there, is it?
No.
No.
I don't mind about the camera. Karen. Let me see. How could we get Karen? That's the thing.
Do you want me to call her?
Do you mind if you have her number? I don't. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Sure. She could try and call in.
Right. She could call in on the phone too. We don't mind not seeing her.
So,
I don't think I have her cell. That would be funny if I did, but I could. You never know. Karen.
Where are you going?
Oh.
Up
Let's
to
see.
the
Maybe I do.
Adirondacks.
Oh, really?
No, I just
Yeah,
emailed.
yeah.
We did that once. We visited friends up there. It was fun, right in the middle of summer. The hiking is great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my family has a place up there, so
Oh, that's good.
we go up,
Yeah.
you know, 2 or 3 times during the summer.
there are certain problems
It's funny, like, when
Saw.
I didn't quite realize how many great hikes were.
Well
At
timed.
one point, I just saw it and I thought, wow, this looks
Never a
great. So
dull
I
moment.
went up by myself. And it's frightful. You get up there.
Where'd they
and
have
it's
it?
Very steep.
Yeah.
You're really not sure exactly where you are.
Did anyone take the
Of course,
gondola
It
up?
started to rain. you know.
Vernacular?
Oh my goodness.
Well, actually,
my wife didn't know
All
where
right,
I
now you
was.
can see us.
But I mean, I
All right,
survived,
and
but it was
we're
like,
tracing
you know,
down
it's how
Karen,
it's
and then
real
we'll
stuff.
get going.
Yeah.
All right, to
Yeah.
use a little bit of our time, call to order. Let's get it while we can. Special meeting of the LPC. Thank you guys for being responsive. This has been moving a little bit fast, but we're nimble, so yay. I mean, slow but fast but slow. You know? So there is a special meeting with the select board and all the housing stakeholders next Tuesday the 30th. It's at 6 p.m. It's at the community center. Christine wisely pointed out to us that we had to post an agenda for that since, we're meeting. So we did, so we're all compliant, and we have an agenda posted for this as well. The goal of this meeting is to kind of provide some high-level feedback of the housing production plan, which I think we can do very much as long as we can get Karen on. And Christine is just making sure Karen can join us.
Joyce, are you looking for us all to be in person for that 30th?
Whoever can join, I think can. I don't,
But isn't it sort of a public meeting?
It is a public meeting. It'll be, I think everybody's invited, but the LPC is invited. I will be there to represent, so.
Actually, technically, I think it's a public hearing. They need to have 2 public hearings on the house.
Okay.
So, but the trust was invited, the housing committee, all the stakeholders.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's no surprises, I think, with the plan for the select board.
Is David out of town? Because I know he is.
David was hoping to join us. He is ill,
Oh.
but he and was hoping to join remotely. Let's see if he's messaging me. But he gave some detailed, actually, feedback, as David is known to do.
Yeah.
So I think he probably feels that's we're able to pass that on.
Okay.
There comes Karen. There comes Christine.
There she is.
Couldn't get through to her.
Oh dear. Well, okay, let me call
was
her.
out
Let me
before,
try one
wasn't
more
she?
time, and then if not, you know what we'll do? This is recorded.
She was.
I think it's okay if we could just, because it's pretty awesome to have all us together. Maybe we could. You're here. We could provide some feedback, and she could listen to it, right?
Okay.
Would that be okay? I don't want to squander this opportunity of all of us in the.
But what if she can talk into that?
Let's see. Oh, this might be her. I don't want to distract her.
Uncall that.
Whatever bandwidth she has, I don't want to be hitting that signal.
We just broke it. It's done now.
Yes!
Yay!
Oh my god.
Karen, if you want to keep your video off, we're cool with that. We're
I'm
it'll
fine with that.
yeah,
Believe me, I'm fine
it'll
with that.
decrease the bandwidth. We're good with that. No problem. All right, we're gonna just hit it before we. I had a little introductory stuff. So we have some of our core members that turn into pumpkins around 6:10. So we'll be efficient. So that's good. Are you going to be at the meeting next Tuesday in person or virtually?
In person.
Wonderful. Okay, that's thrilling. Thank you for joining us all the way from Connecticut. We're grateful. I'll be there, as many as of our committee that'll be there. I expect it to be somewhat spirited. Who knows? David provided you some, I think, detailed written feedback. He's ill and isn't able to join us, but we can kind of jump in. My approach was to maybe start with some kind of general feedback, and then there's some small things. Is that okay with you?
Whatever works for you works for me.
Okay. To start off, I wanted to really say, Karen, I spent a lot of time with this weekend, and I mean, what an amazing effort and undertaking. I really want to hats off to your professional expertise and the nuance and the data and then the human piece and really, we're really, really grateful for you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. The passion and the experience that you bring to the work really shows through. So we're lucky to have you doing this for us. We're appreciative. To kind of jump in and kind of build on some feedback, that David was saying, I think probably the majority of our folks will read the first couple pages, and there's a lot in the document that I thought maybe could, some of the, in terms of the feedback, some of the very wording that comes later in the document might be moved a little bit higher. There are a few sort of gems that will, I think, really potentially hit it out of the park, because I think, again, this is open to the committee, but my sense was it was all there. It was maybe getting some of the details on the first few pages. And just to throw it out there, my general point of feedback, kind of having listened to, we've been at this for a while, all our in-person sessions, all the data we've gathered about the postcards and the surveys, and those pretty high level and detailed survey questions. I wanted to put in that executive summary kind of something of this sentiment, which I think you have later on, is that I think we recognize this, both the data and the interpersonally, that this is a critical time for the community of Harwich in the sense of lack of, attainable housing. And we have some of the quotes to put higher in that executive summary where, the community we know and love and the services we kind of have taken for granted in town are threatened by people not being able to live in our community. And I looking at that, at what people told us, I think we can be pretty perhaps detailed, and you were specific. You were later on. The superintendent of schools has said repeatedly, he is unable to hire teachers for the school district because they can't find a place to live. Our fire chief, our police chief have also said that repeatedly. Our municipal services and our beloved municipal workers that help us run our town face these same challenges. I think you're doing an amazing job of there's several demographics there, and you talk about that so respectfully and so data driven. I think we can maybe say that a little bit more in the executive summary.
Yep.
And it's there, so hopefully, it's kind of a cut and paste and put it up higher. And then then I will stop and open it up to the group. It's sort of, this is a point of related feedback. Page 12 and page 18, there was some phrasing on page 12 about lack of decent paying jobs. That was actually the phrasing. And then page 18 about jobs. And I think in your data later on about jobs, there's a big service sector, but we also recognize, as a community, just like the municipal workers and all of our important core town employees, Cape Cod Hospital has untoward number of nursing, scrub, support staff positions that are unfilled because of people not being able to live, on the Cape and work. So I don't know if it's the angle is really that there aren't good jobs. I think there's a lot of good jobs. You just can't have the good job and live here too. that is some of the pressure. And to that phrasing, to expand potentially right on that page 18, and I knew what you meant from reading it, subsidized rental options. I think, as we stand before this hearing next week and then hearing some of the community feedback, there's this mismatch between jobs available and housing, and perhaps, I'm going to steal some of the stuff that Garrett had sent me, perhaps expanding the language of subsidized to include, but this is to your expertise, incentives, rebates, subsidies, and grants to encourage year-round housing encompasses more, I think, what we were hearing in our feedback sessions. Even though subsidized includes that, but I can anticipate that that's going to be a grump fest a little bit.
Well, anything that is below market will have to be subsidized.
No, I hear you.
Likely.
I hear you.
One way or the other.
I hear you. Yeah. If you want to just include more expansive language, because I think it helps folks understand the complexity of this problem, and so
Yeah.
it's not just like, you know, bringing on however many units. I mean, that will certainly help, and that this is multifactorial.
Could I
Multi what?
Factorial.
could I just respond to that?
I've got it.
Please, and then Brian has his hand up too, but sure, Margot, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I think it's the stress on the need for subsidies is really important.
Yeah.
Because there's a myth out there that if you just build lots more housing, that will take care of the problem.
Right.
And I think we all know that because of our second home market here, that's not going to work here. That just simply increasing the housing stock without making sure that there are subsidies and deed restrictions and things to keep those units affordable and available to the people that need them.
Right, and I would
Yeah.
piggyback on that. You know, I saw some of the language sprinkled throughout there, but again, kind of getting it forward to the executive summary. You know, incentivizing year-round housing, long-term rentals, like kind of emphasizing that. I mean, we're saying the same thing, but like someone picks apart subsidy, but this is what that all means, and somebody who hasn't maybe participated in all this conversation. Brian, and then Ed.
Yeah, I think we need to be very careful about raising the jobs comment, as we've learned during COVID. We're more in a gig economy than we've ever been.
Yes.
And people drove a lot of remote work, which then in turn allowed people to buy second homes and drive the price up that way. So I think we got to be really careful about that.
I think it can just come out. I think that was not. Yeah, agreed.
Okay.
Ed?
Yeah, in that section on page 18, it goes, this trend suggests a need for not only workforce development efforts.
Can we talk louder?
Hold on, let me get,
Turn it on too. Does it have a little green light?
is that better?
Yeah, let's go back to what you were saying.
Okay.
Yeah. In section, page 18, the section that goes, this trend suggests a need for not only workforce development efforts, but also more starter home opportunities for first-time home buyers. As such, new development in the private housing market has virtually been eliminated. Clearly, more subsidized rental options would also be extremely helpful in housing this cohort. Personally, following on Margot's comment, I think, the stress should be more on developing attainable and affordable rental housing, because quite honestly, the home ownership housing take more land to do than rental options, and two, you put somebody in a home ownership housing and they stay there for a long time, whereas rental tends to turn over and services the young population that we need to give a starter position.
When I read it, and this is great that we're going to meet with next week and see. When I read it, I thought you were really beautifully threading the needle, Karen, of kind of including all of it. Like, I left this document kind of getting that emphasis for sure, particularly with the focus on kind of the two projects before the town, but also you so beautifully address the AMI levels, and that was, and how challenging it would be based on certain income levels to buy a home. And then, if we can put in the executive summary, we'll kind of connect the dots for folks, what does that mean? We go back to, and I mean this most respectfully, never in it's not in a reductive way, the teacher firefighter, sort of, because people can imagine that and start to understand that. Mm-hmm. I thought you thread that needle beautifully. this is important, why this group is here. We should probably take out the East Harwich references. I think those were, well, I would ask Karen and, or ask Christine, there are some East Harwich references, kind of like, oh, East Harwich is the best place to do that. I think we kind of got the sense of that we were looking for a more village-based approach. I would open it up. Do we need, to my sense, given what we had discussed, that was no longer accurate, but it's a good thing to talk about here.
Well, the East Harwich Growth Center, or village or center, whatever you want to call it, does have a lot of potential for mixed use. And that could be rental housing over downstairs commercial space. There are a variety of things. East Harwich incorporates not just that growth center, but a much bigger geographic area, which is, the watershed for Pleasant Bay and stuff. So I think there's a difference.
Could we say it maybe in building on what Margot said, a more kind of nuanced way, village-based approach, and East Harwich is an example of potential mixed-use opportunities, and I think that would be representative of what folks were telling us. I just don't want to be distracted by, the East Harwich group that has a different issue in terms of the 1 acre lots and the zoning and the second homes that are being built there. They're two unrelated things, but yeah. Go ahead, Barbara.
Sorry, but the reality is that East Harwich is the only place that has wastewater plant.
Yeah.
You can include some density.
Yes. So I think a nuanced way. I just didn't want to be, that's the only place you can do it. And then the two projects before the town now are not in that, so that we sort of lose a little. I think what Margot said, it was a great example of there's opportunities for some mixed use, some density.
Yeah, we've made it clear that there are opportunities for mixed use in the village centers.
Right.
I was kind of curious about that line in East Harwich, because I took it from somewhere about there was some plans to do some rezoning.
That may have been some older stuff, but I
this is really helpful. So I understand your position of going to more nuanced language there. I will definitely address that.
Okay, that's good. Welcome, David.
Hello.
Can
you hear me?
Yes, we can. We thank you for joining us. We're kind of plugging along. We thank you for your detailed verbal, your written comments. That was great. We're kind of building upon those.
Do you want to further comment on East Harwich, or are you moving beyond that?
No, you have a lot of expertise. Tell us.
The zoning effort that was involved when I was there was too big, too much. And regardless of that, East Harwich still has the most readily available land close to a village and on the sewer. So that has to be taken seriously. It can be done.
And you can walk to the grocery store.
Zoning district. Yeah. Can be done within the existing zoning district, because there is no need for the sort of commercial development that was envisioned 30 years ago.
Yep. Nice sidewalks to walk to the grocery store, sewer. Yep.
Yeah, Dave, what do you mean by there's no need for the commercial development in 30 years? I don't understand that comment.
People were envisioning all sorts of retail development. That's simply not what's happening anymore.
Right, but should it?
No.
I mean, it was like, is there going to be a Target there and stuff like that? That's...
Well, not that level, but should there be more restaurants, or should there be more resources? Should you build the village out a bit more?
Yes, there should be more restaurants, but in terms of basically stores, retail type of uses, there simply ain't much demand for that right now. And there's already quite a bit of it. A lot of the retail type of places have now been turned into medical offices, because that's what the demand is. So even though there is room for mixed use, there's a lot of land there that is not needed for what it was originally zoned for, and would be a prime location for some affordable housing.
I agree.
Wow, that'd be interesting.
I guess my point is the more housing you put in, the more pressure it puts on some of the additional retail footprint, restaurants and such. So they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, you have room for both, but all I'm saying is you don't need anywhere near the extent of what was envisioned before.
Well,
And let me ask this, because
I have to get up again, guys. I will be back.
All right.
as a follow-up to what David just said.
David, you're not muted.
Yes, hold on.
David, you're
All right.
Trying.
Oh,
I'll kick him off.
we said that
No, I don't want any Girl Scout cookies.
housing is based on
He's back.
access to the sewer. I think we ought to qualify the comments to say, as it's connected to those resources, but what happens when West Harwich develops to a point where we're potentially leveraging Dennis resources?
I don't know if we
We
need
need to qualify these comments as we go.
I don't know if we need to delve into that here. I mean, this is the housing production plan, but point all well taken. I just and Karen, I think you get what we're saying. We just there's
I think the city center,
Yes.
the city
The
centers,
village centers.
the village
The
centers
village
is
centers.
the thing to emphasize,
Yes,
not
yes.
a specific location.
Right.
Because to Brian's point, there's going to be expansion of sewer in other parts, right? And so that just needs to be accounted for future development.
other high level points of feedback. I have a few little small things, but they're gonna be ridiculously nitpicky. Not nitpicky, but just small corrections.
Just one suggestion I noticed in looking at the section on development constraints, that there's some language from, I assume, came out of the open space and recreation plan. And I think some of that language has been updated since then. There are some discrepancies in terms of the number of ponds, and there was a paragraph that talked about the Monomoy Wildlife Reserve, which is in Chatham and not in Harwich. So I think you just need to double back with the folks who are working on the open space plan and make sure you've got the latest version of that information.
Okay.
Which section was the Monomoy?
It's in the development constraints section. It's like page 60 something to 70 something.
One thing you may want to reference of, you again talked, I think made this really like nuanced point of how many older folks are living in town, how many folks are living alone and older, and how there may be an opportunity, to transition to a different type of housing. And there is an existing program in town called, I had to dig down the name, the Caleb Chase Fund, which, Chase and Sanborn Coffee, this is a deep nerdy dive on Harwich history, but it made a lot of money in coffee and built the Chase Library in West Harwich. This is the turn of the century. And there's an existing endowment that is administered by 2 residents of the town to encourage older folks with both home maintenance and, I think, utility bills. So you may want to reference that just as like an example of a community-based solution that then potentially expands.
They have been very charitable to the Council on Foundation and our program, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
High-level discussion that coming out from the gate here. What did you think, Karen and Christine, of the effort, everybody, the suggestion of merging the housing trust and some of that? Is there redundancy in terms of housing committee, housing trust? aligning, that was a suggestion, is that, what do you think?
Well, I gotta say, if they don't become merged, there has to be some greater kind of descriptions on the respective roles and responsibilities.
Yeah. So
in
let's,
order to have some accountability.
let's say it, Karen, let's be provocative and say, you just said it so beautifully.
I know, if you go through the document, and you look at the missions of each of them now, I didn't know whether to include, to have the housing committee in charge or the housing trust in charge. Someone needs to point out, where the responsibilities lie. But I did add that strategy about either better defining the respective roles and responsibilities or at some point merging the two. Mm-hmm. It does happen. A lot of communities have let go of their housing committees, their housing partnerships, and molded them into
I think you can
trust, because housing trusts have greater powers. So
I think you could say that. Yeah, you could say that, and that's like potentially an action plan for the board of, selectmen, select board.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's in there. I mean, the question is it, if it's too politically sensitive to include, somehow there has to be some better definition.
I think you're right about that. It definitely needs better. The missions of the two organizations need to be clarified, and I think it's one of those things of, there was a housing committee. The housing committee had a certain charge, and then they used the state legislation to create the trust to do some things that go beyond what the housing committee was doing before, and
which made complete sense.
Yeah. But it is murky, and I think there's been confusion about it.
The housing committee
I haven't
always,
been able to get a straight answer on that. I mean,
the housing committee always was a advocacy and sort of planning committee, whereas, quite honestly, the housing trust is more of a development committee.
Right.
Yeah.
But to Karen's point, where roles and responsibilities change with time, and so I think asking that question in the document, I think, is very important, and it's an opportunity to start that discussion.
Yeah.
Great, what a great role for a planning document. Small things as we're charging ahead, page 29, about the education systems, I would lead with the Monomoy School District as opposed to the order that it is currently now, which is the charter school, or the TEC, the charter school, and the Monomoy School District. Though the charter school and the TEC are important adjuncts, the kind of heart of the community beats with the Monomoy School District, as does our dollars. So I would lead with that. And the TEC and the charter school are more adjunct.
what page are you on?
29. Page 29.
Your number page. It's on.
Page 29.
I should leave. Yeah, my page number is like.
Okay. Page 29. It starts. Yeah.
So I should. Yeah. I should.
In the paragraph, the way it's structured, it starts out with the charter school and the TEC, and then gets to Monomoy.
Yeah.
Have Monomoy first. Flip the order of that paragraph. Okay. The charter school, that's a whole other sitch, the charter school. So I would go Monomoy School District, TEC, and the charter school is really more of an adjunct.
Got it.
Ed.
Well, I had a question, but I finally found it, which was the inclusion of the Affordable Housing Stabilization Fund, which wasn't in the original document. And I haven't yet, has there any mention been put in the housing production plan of the action that was taken to expand the trust's ability to deal with attainable housing?
Yeah, I did add that.
Okay.
And I did add, based on your comments, the Affordable Housing Stabilization Fund.
Yeah, which, you know, quite honestly, should bring in somewhat amount, $500,000 a year.
I did have a question on whether that funding that was directed towards affordable housing shouldn't just be deposited in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Why
Well,
create another fund?
because at the time, I don't believe the Affordable Housing Trust existed when that was created.
Uh-huh.
So maybe it's
Yeah.
another one of those
Yeah,
things that needs to be
sorted out,
sorted out.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I just didn't want it to be overlooked in the
Right.
process.
Right.
And you know, by having it,
Yeah.
having it
That
pointed
was
out,
helpful.
that may be what happens over the year.
Got it. That was helpful. Your comments were helpful.
On page 57, like positive updates, you were looking for the status, so you could totally reference, I think the old Bank Street Firehouse is a success story. We'll stay it that way. There's some articles in the Chronicle about it, but that is like a great example of a mixed use where the historians are happy. It's preserved. There's a couple apartments going in on it, and our conservationists are happy because there's going to be some trail around there too. So, yeah, that's a good, that's a success story.
What's the status of that project? I had a question on that. 'Cause
Yes,
I
that's why I was addressing it. It's going forward, right?
Yes,
It's
the,
like, yeah.
The habitat restoration is wrapping up.
Yeah.
If it hasn't already, most of it. And the apartments are still being worked on, as well as the fire museum, but there'll be 3 affordable apartments on the 2nd floor. And the museum will be opened with restrooms for the members of the public who are utilizing
Yeah.
the trails.
Yeah.
And-
Lots of people are happy about that.
So,
and the
It's a
funding,
great project.
it's
Yeah.
near completion.
Yeah, it's almost
Yeah.
done. So you could say, "Hey, look at you can do this. Look."
Yeah. Got it.
And
Yeah.
then the rec building, what do we want to call that? I knew what you're talking about, but that's become a deep dive in Harwich. That's like a long time ago. What do we want to call it? The West Harwich Schoolhouse. That's on the same page, 57. The West Harwich Schoolhouse is what I would call it. It is happening. That's also, people have gotten excited about it. Maybe Christine wants to say, yeah, I know, not to put you on the spot, but it is actively being redeveloped by a local developer with, it's not big A affordable housing, with rental housing.
Is this the what?
West Harwich, behind the Baptist church.
Okay. I understand the Baptist church might be.
Yes, two different things. So I would keep it vague there. I would call it the West Harwich School, local developer, rental stock.
and as I understand
Nothing
it,
affordable.
I don't know.
There is some. That's a good question, actually, for the select board. There is some income restriction on that, I believe.
Some of them are. I have
Oh,
the
he's
article up.
got the article up, Garrett. There are some affordable.
But the
Okay.
building, the old building itself is gonna be developed into 7 units.
Right.
And there are another 23 units that will be.
Is it that much?
I heard,
Oh.
in the article in the paper, I saw the figure 30, so.
I don't know. Okay.
But
Is
what they're
that-
having, the problem they're having now is getting access to town water. It's, they had assumed that they would connect onto the pipe that was put in by the town to service the little private cottage area when
Yeah, behind it. Yeah.
their water source went sour. But they've decided, well, it's their pipe now, even though the town put it in for them, and they're not letting
Oh.
the folks.
So here's an example of the challenges. The firehouse is success and the challenges. Okay.
The other, I guess, comment about the stabilization fund is by having a dedicated tax-based revenue source, the money that comes into the stabilization fund could be cited as a revenue source to pay off a large housing bond that the town could put out to be able to financially assist in the development of attainable and affordable housing. You know.
Yeah, I think I'll go back, I think based on your comments, added that.
Yeah.
In a couple places okay, I hear what you said, give it important emphasis.
Because initially, you know, when the land bank was passed, the expected revenue from that was pledged to be the revenue source to pay off the bonding, which paid for all of the initial bunch of land purchases. We do the same with this. As opposed to doing a housing bond that goes on the tax rate.
Hey Joyce,
Yes.
quick question. There's a really good table that she had, that Karen put in the report of all the potential new existing facilities and then potential facilities coming down the road. Does anybody know what's going on with the property up at the corner of Bank and Parallel? That they've been working on it. I mean, David, do we know what that's going to be anymore?
Ed will know.
I don't actually.
Oh.
It was originally
The old
going
fancy
to be,
nursing home? Yeah.
I don't know, what was he gonna do, 18 units there, or I
Yeah.
forget, and Winston across the street took him to court and got it thrown out. And they came back with another plan which has fewer units. Obviously, they're gonna be more expensive to rent, but I don't know the number. But they are moving ahead significantly with it.
So have they got?
Yeah, there was a table on page 102 that listed town-owned properties that we've included in previous plans, and my question to you folks was, do we still want to keep it in or not?
That table is mostly out of date.
Okay. Okay.
To your question about the responses, about the survey, I don't know if it, just for continuity's sake, if you wanted to kind of merge, just simplistic sake, the postcard and the survey together. Like, I don't think you have to kind of like totally break it out. You could just say, two different ways of accessing the, however you want to say it. And together, I think we had over 1,300 responses. There was over 1,000 responses for the survey, I think, and like 3 something for the postcards. So if you want to lump it all together.
Yeah.
Other high level feedback, just it's 10 till 6, we're doing great. Karen and Christine, are there things that we should be covering that we're not? I mean, this is like a massive document.
You guys are doing great. You're covering a lot of my questions. Certainly. And we also have issues that David raised too. I had a question. In the survey, you asked a question, is one of the strategies should be public acquisition of easements to require year-round use versus short-term rentals. And are you talking about, instead of easements, you're talking about deed restrictions?
Deed restrictions.
Okay, because I was like, easements meant something different to me, and, okay, all right. That's one of my questions. And
like
the other is, how I might be able to get some information on the portion of CPA money that's been actually allocated for housing?
Say that again?
Information on the portion of CPA allocations that have actually been directed to housing.
We should be able to get that.
Yeah.
Relatively easy from the CPC committee, because they have to keep tabs of.
Yeah,
an
there's,
accounting of where all of the
I
funds
think
go to.
on their, I don't know what, on
And
their
it might be
old,
in the annual
on their
report.
old website, you know, I don't know what's been updated and what hasn't with the town's new website, but they had a section where they listed year by year what the allocations were for different projects.
Between housing and open space
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
recreation and. it's-
Yeah.
Karen, would you want that through all time or a specific year?
Well, I'll take it anywhere you can get it. I can get it. You know, just some indication of kind of the
That there-
respective, you know,
There's-
allocation to housing versus open
Yeah,
spaces. or-
there's been a substantial,
Ideally
amount.
historic, but if it's not historic, you know, at least the last couple of years, for example.
Christine, is that
If you
something
want
you can
the
follow
house-
up on?
I can call.
The money that's kind of given to the housing trust, that doesn't go back more than half a dozen years. So it would be possible to either add up year by year or to see if CPC has a better summary.
Yeah.
But that's
I
what we
was
should be
just hoping
doing.
they had a better summary, and,
Yeah. they should be
there's
able to-
nothing on the website that has, that I could get that information. I go back and project by project. All right.
Either their secretary or the chair should be able to direct an answer on that.
Christine's gonna follow up on it. It's great.
Great.
Trucking along kind of through the document, I thought your strategy of the boxes that blow out like kind of human points that kind of connects the data, like general high level concepts, super strong. I was down with that. In terms of the editing on page 61, that an example of following up on kind of what I had led with about the general trend toward declining numbers of young adults and children. That is a great box if you maybe move it earlier into the executive summary, because I know you did a shout out early on to our elderly who are equally important. But that was actually one of the things we got out of that survey data was like holding space for both. And that's a really great sentence if it goes earlier in the document. And then also tweaking a little bit about, this is a great example of, I wouldn't say the combination of fewer job opportunities, because I to Brian's point, I don't think we can exactly say that, but a mismatch between the pay of jobs and the escalating living expenses. That's where our trouble is, you know, to double back on like the superintendent not being able to hire teachers, fire department, you know, paying oodles of overtime because all the firefighters live over the bridge. There are the jobs, but it's the mismatch between the pay and escalating living expenses that are, you know.
And I'll bring that forward to the executive.
Yeah, because that resonates with folks. And I this is my implicit bias, I know, but the other thing that hurts people around and is a powerful number is your stats about the declining enrollment in the schools. That makes, you know, that's and where you put that super small feedback on page 29, you had housing choice in it and it's school choice.
Page 29.
It's not housing choice, it's school choice. Which is, again, respectfully, a little dirty little secret, and that the Harwich schools, the Monomoy public schools are very strong. And so we've hidden behind some of the declining enrollment by school choice. It's not bad, but it just
So you're saying, you're saying that
our in declining enrollment by children who live in Harwich would be infinitely worse.
if there
if it
weren't
was-
students coming here from other communities?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the last I looked, Nauset was the #1 school choice district on the Cape, and Harwich, Monomoy is the second.
Okay, that's interesting.
And then the other.
Jim and then Ed, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm not sure how these help or don't help, but as I read this stuff and I think about what we've been doing, it hits me that I'm never sure whether we should be satisfied to be improving our situation or solving the problem. You know, and some of these things like the fire departments, the firehouse and stuff is nice, but it's going to help a few people, not anywhere near the large numbers that are out there. So it's interesting whether we want to say our goal is improvement, you know, making a thing, or is it solving? And then that's really hard. And then I think in some of this solving, nobody wants to hear this, but it probably takes tax money in big numbers. I mean, you know, in some ways, if you want to build affordable housing, somebody has to buy land and get a permission to put more houses on it, and so that'll probably take it'll take money to buy those places. I can't imagine that they're going to have a rule that somebody who is a developer and owns, you know, 50 acres or something is going to have to give it up for nothing because they want to do something. So that's I don't know how you talk about it, but it's there. And then the third thing, of course, is the good news is there's a 2050 situation, which Karen sort of looks, you know, develops very nicely, which is a lot of us older people are going to be gone, and there's going to be some empty houses again in 2050 that you could think about doing other things with in some ways. So, you know, it's hard when you read it to know how you balance all these things, for me anyway. But
Ed?
Yeah, and I guess
Yep.
the other point that in our priorities I think should be made is, you know, we keep on hinting at it and talking about it, and it comes up in other sections in the local comprehensive plan, but some sort of statement about as you know, we identify especially possible areas for, you know, somewhat higher density attainable housing in village centers, that as those get identified, then what makes it most possible is that those areas move up on the priority list of being serviced for wastewater.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have to, you know, to solve our housing need, you have to connect those two issues.
that's true.
Yep.
Yep.
You know, and to say that they're just sort of separate issues.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yep.
So, and with that, I have to go next door because I have to give some information on
Thank you.
on a.
Did we cover any you're an expert, every high level
Yep.
feedback?
It's a public hearing.
Thank you. We got your priorities, Ed, covered though?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, you've done an amazing job. This is like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really amazing. I was like one of these like really lovely phrases that is in red on, that's another really strong, as a critical reader, you might want to put higher up in your, while the community survey suggested a higher level of interest in home ownership over rentals, it's important to acknowledge that 95%, that paragraph on 65, you know, in the pragmatic, that is just like a really beautiful.
That's really stood out to me, I gotta tell you.
Yeah, that's really beautiful synthesis. I mean, it's all true, right? This is the inherent tension. This is why this is like a 70-page document, because it's complicated.
Yeah.
It's a
Complicated.
it's a concise sentence that goes to the complexity.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe we could talk a little bit about David's comments too.
Please, yeah, go ahead.
I very much appreciate it, and some of them are just real easy. Some I just need some clarification. You know, on the length of the document, the pendencies, we don't have to include all that information. It's meant to be a resource for the town. if you think it's too long, you don't want the summary of housing resources or regulations, that's your decision on what you want to see in there. But I just want to put it out there that some of that, if you want, can be taken out. I mean, this is a document for residents, but it's more importantly a document for boards and committees for implementation. And if there were, I just thought some glossary and information on local groups and regulations and
No, I think it's great.
resources would be
I mean,
helpful.
if
Anyway, something to think about.
if you don't put it there, who will? I think it's great. I think it would, by strengthening the executive summary, maybe we have the best of both worlds, you know? You have so much, yeah, go ahead, David.
Just to back that up, there's nothing wrong with all the stuff you
Yeah,
put in
it's
there.
remarkable.
That there's a lot of great stuff. But if this plan, and I think I said in my comments, if we're going to make this work, if this is going to be accountable and people are going to point to something 5 years from now as to whether we accomplished it or not, we have to have an executive summary that people can look at without looking at all the other stuff.
Right.
And within that executive summary, similar to your table 1 dash whatever it was, we have to have a list. And the only trouble I had with that table was I thought some of the things were too high. I thought there was a different set of priorities. Whatever priorities our committee comes up with, I just want to have a pretty manageable list that we can point to and say, this is what we've accomplished, or this is what we haven't over the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years.
Which in
Yeah,
our,
I was just wondering when you put your list of priorities, I think that, you know, I was wondering if you wanted me to completely reorganize that table and just have these instead of what's in the table already, because I was thinking, well, that wouldn't be terrible, but there are some strategies that are in there, particularly related to zoning, that would kind of be thrown by the wayside. And I'd like the planning board to be able to, you know, weigh in on all of these. We might not need to include all of them, but I think we need to have them weigh in on it. Did you mean to have the categories changed, David, or?
Well, did I? Yeah, I probably did. Just to
in our,
Do it, I can do it.
in our remaining, yeah.
Know which ones we want in and which we want
In
out.
our remaining time, could we do that? Because I agree with David that first table on page 9, you know, you might want to include that up higher in your executive summary as well. And do we want to go through that? I mean, because that's a very, you know, we're in the weeds.
It's in the exec, yeah.
Oh, is it? Is it? Okay, sorry. Should we?
May I offer a suggestion?
Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah.
As I'm hearing, I agree that it's a very robust document, and some of the general population might view it as a bit daunting. And by beefing up the executive summary and putting a lot of focus there, I think there'll be greater interest to actually explore the document. However, Karen, I am mindful of what you mentioned, that you added all that information, which is wonderful, as a resource for implementation. If you could state that somewhere in there, it may catch the ear, the eye of the general public to understand that differentiation, that this is a positive document to be used further as opposed to just presenting a report.
Got it.
And what I tried to do in my list,
Basically, yeah.
Go ahead, David, and then Brian.
in my list of priorities, I tried to pull out what I thought was the most important. We have 2 existing projects. That'll make a huge difference in our SHI numbers. One of the projects doesn't have full public acceptance yet, but we should move forward in some fashion with those. Second, I'm parroting Ed when I say, show me the money. And I tried to call out 4 specific type of sources where we can really get the money. For zoning, for me, the 3rd point, that's where I live, that's where I come from. But
Right.
we can do much more above the lowest affordable level and the mid-range level to use developers, but only if we grant the density with some very clear public guidelines, that's gonna give Christine and the planning board an awful lot of work to make that really work, but I think it's a good goal. I won't go through all of those, but Karen, the only other thing I would say is there were some things on your list that even though you want to set them all, I didn't quite buy. The example of the open space bylaw, I personally don't think that's the right connection for affordable housing. So there are a few in there, and I'm just using that one example. Where I probably
I met with the planning board, they said that they were gonna be taking that up. That's why, I think this meeting on Tuesday is gonna be interesting.
Interesting.
Well, I was a minority view on that.
A follow-up question, David, just for me to understand where, or finger on the pulse, what project do you think doesn't have full acceptance of the public? I'm referencing Pine Oaks and Marceline, which is not really, we don't really want to call it Marceline, but like Marceline and Pine Oaks, which one is accepted in your mind and which one is not accepted?
Marceline is accepted, and Pine Oaks is a lot more units, a lot more of the lowest income category. I think there's going to be a lot of
Okay, I just wanted to get a sense of that. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah.
What you were talking about, Brian. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe it's just me, but David, when I look at your comments with regard to priorities, and then I look at the table in the executive summary, which I think is great, I think we mix terms between priorities, strategies, recommendations. I find it hard to follow. I think there's a great deal of information in here, and I'm wondering if we take the priorities that you were just outlining, David, and they may be the columns in this table on what I see as page 10. And are these strategies that are listed down, I think there's 14 or 15, are they then the recommendations? Because they don't appear to tick and tie in the document. And as a reader, I was losing.
The whole housing strategy section of the document relates to the strategies included in this summary. They're actions, whether they be capacity building, zoning, actual development, preservation. They're specific actions, and each of them has a background or a context as well as a specific recommendation, who's responsible and what's the time frame. A lot of what David has priorities is prioritized here in this table. The question is whether I reorganize it in a different way, whether, and whether we include all these strategies, like consider adapting Dennis's municipally sponsored housing project bylaw. I took from one of David's comments earlier on, whether we do inclusionary zoning. I think that's important, and it's for the town to buy in, for the planning board to give us their perspective. Allow housing for seasonal workers under proper conditions. That's been raised as an issue in the town. Do we want a strategy on that? It's all written out in narrative form. This is just a summary of the ones that are actually carved out in the housing strategy section.
Christine had a
I guess
point.
what I'm saying is that if you list the strategies and maybe the priorities, what you have listed as priorities really become the priorities that David was trying to outline, and then in cells you could write medium and low, which is the relative priority of starting here or starting later.
Yeah, that's what, years 1 and 2 were meant to be the priority ones versus, 3 and 5. And we're also talking about a 5-year plan. And 5 years, as you guys know, goes by a wink of the eye. So, it'll be.
What I'm saying is you could weave in what David was suggesting and put it into the table and kind of bring more clarity to it.
Yeah, but see, that's why I'm having trouble figuring out, does he just want me to reorganize?
David, tell us what you think, David.
Let me try again. I think your assigning a year is excellent. I think your primary responsibility is excellent. I think the table right now, to me, could be organized better. And I really want to see a very clear list of the top priorities. The things we would accomplish, well, not over the next few years, that'll never happen, but even the next 5 years. And then you can have your other whole list. But to me, I would just put it a little further down.
All right,
Okay.
I can do that. I'm probably gonna wait until after the, meeting next Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
All the,
Yeah.
all the changes at one shot.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. And
But
it'll
I can
be,
make changes.
it'd
And
be
I think
interesting.
It'd be great if you could be there and talk about this.
Okay.
It'd be
I mean, could you bold highlight that top priority?
interesting to see if there's.
I mean, I think what David's
Repetition
onto is,
feedback.
I think is critically important. Otherwise, they all look, there's too many things to look at.
Yeah, there's too many.
Okay,
To that end, if it's fun to cut things out when you're doing a big document like this, on page 101, your little nice comment, you still want to include about the parcels, publicly owned properties with publicly owned.
David says it's out of date.
Okay, so are we just going to take it out? I'm cool with that.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
I'm fine with that. I think the focus is Marceline, Pine Oaks, and then our other, expanded strategies, so that this chart is probably less relevant right now. Cool.
Okay. Okay.
Are you guys okay with that? I mean, actually, Christine and Margot maybe have a professional opinion about that. Too.
On that table. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't be so hasty, because there's,
Well, didn't the open space and, the real estate and open space committee make some recommendations to the select board on town-owned properties that might be ideal for housing?
Yes,
And-
and there were, I mean, this has happened a couple of times. Several years ago, the real estate committee recommended certain parcels. Those were actually conveyed to the control of the housing trust. So they have a certain number of properties. And some of those are problematic, but at any rate, that was done. And then we, about, God, I don't know, 6 months ago, gave them another recommendation about places that we thought might be suitable. And as far as I know, nothing has happened to follow up on that at this point.
it's like an interesting question of like people working at it, and yet, like what rises to the top in terms of priorities and, go ahead, David. But how much is
What page
reference?
that on? I'm just pulling on my document now.
For me, in my PDF, 101, table 7,
But,
table 7-2.
Picking up on Margot's comment, anything the real estate and open space committee has done in the last 6 months or year and a half is more relevant than this old table.
Okay. And just to the point of if we're creating a repository of data for the town to take actions on forward, I guess what we're saying is maybe that more updated information would be needed.
Yeah, looking at the table now, I agree with David. I think it's out of date.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dexter Road, for example, is all wetlands, and I could probably go through the others
Yeah,
and figure out what the
yeah.
problems were.
Take it out.
yeah.
Pick up that one and see what real estate and open space has done more recently.
Okay.
Okay.
I loved the inclusion of our vision statement. Another turn of phrase that just in my notes that either you had or what you had and I pulled out or something, writing by committee here, preserve community character and support long-term residents. We talked about incentivizing long-term rentals. We talked about the wordage of which, incentivize, rebate, subsidize, grants. We talked about leading up with the young. I'm also, you have access to the survey data and the postcards. One of the things we've talked about in making these documents living, if you permission to pull out like any real quote that makes it come alive. The superintendent is on the record in the Chronicle and things like that about the difficulty of housing and hiring.
Yeah, I'll pull that forward.
Yeah. Christine.
Oh, I had another question for
Please.
David.
Oh, please, go ahead,
And
Karen.
it was on the page 1 of the executive summary, on the footnote, a question about the definition of affordable versus attainable housing.
Yeah.
And, you're basically saying the upper limit of 120% AMI does not fully address our perceived need to consider affordability for young families seeking home ownership or affordable rental housing for workers. This need is documented elsewhere in HPD, too restricted by the definition of affordable housing. And we've included references to attainable and affordable housing, with affordable housing being added below 80% AMI. David, were you saying you thought 120% was too restricted for attainable?
So, again, it's easy to get caught up on terminology, but
yeah.
When we talk about the fact that the superintendent of schools can't attract people that advocate help tell me they can't get nurses because there's no place to live.
Very publicly, a primary care doctor went out with a bang from Outer Cape Health on social media. I'm leaving because I can't buy a house here.
Right.
Right.
So what I'm saying is there is a need, and maybe it's not affordable housing. I know people don't like workforce housing, but maybe there's another category.
We're talking about attainable housing, and we're defining too.
Well, but I'm saying there's a lot of these people are going to be above 120% AMI. And what's the deal with the 200% AMI at the
He's not here right now, but I feel like it was 200%
okay.
for accessing those funds. That was what was voted on.
I think affordable, the 120, or even attainable, maybe the 120%.
Yeah.
There is another category of housing that we need to describe somehow in terms of people trying to work here and move here and so forth. Or already here and want to buy a house. We can't ignore that whole category that's above affordable that's being priced out because of second home prices. That's a big part of our survey.
Mm-hmm. So, David, are you suggesting instead of having attainable capped at 120 to raise it to 200% AMI?
Yeah.
Crazy.
I haven't thought this through far enough to know the answer. I'm just saying we've got a category that we've got to figure out. Maybe attainable is simply not the right word, but we've got to somehow describe.
Well, David, you missed a little bit of it. We were covering some of that earlier when you had to step off, so we did cover that. I think Karen gets that, but to your point of like,
okay, I'll back out.
No. But to your point of actually changing the numbers, I think that's a reasonable question. I don't think that's. I think that's where the housing trust is headed, right? Isn't that where the trust is headed?
Yeah, no.
The 200% is not a number that's generally accepted at the moment.
Okay.
That's market. There are market units for 200%.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. But I think we're going to address the sentiment that you're talking about, David, based on the feedback that we gave earlier. So I think it will be included. I don't think we'll go down in a ball of fire on Tuesday because we didn't include that.
So, Karen, drop my comment on the footnote as long as it's covered. The general idea is covered elsewhere.
Maybe that's a good question though for the meeting on Tuesday. Is looking at their various breakdowns. Let's see how things go.
Yeah, I don't know how strident the public sentiment will be or how informed the public sentiment will be, but to David's, the descriptive sentiment is very evolved, but when you actually put the numbers to the, that's challenging. But you're trying to get that by your rental. You know, you thread that later in the document about the argument for rentals and stuff like that, so.
Yeah. I think I think everything else on your list I can cover pretty easily, David.
Before I call on Barbara, Karen, we're so respectful of your time and so grateful for you, the expertise. Other things.
I'm glad I can be here, given like the
I know!
in front of my house.
You have
and been
persisted.
having a hard time getting back in the meeting. So,
Anything that you need from us that you haven't gotten.
No, I think I'm in pretty good shape. If something comes up, I'll go Christine.
Christine, anything we haven't covered that we should?
No.
You're the adult in the room.
No, I think, I like the capacity building. I think maybe talking about implementation and management strategies are also areas that will need to also be addressed at some point. Because like Margot said earlier in the meeting, once you build it, it's not enough to just build it. You also, it requires maintenance, it requires staffing, it requires monitoring, and so we just want to also make sure that we're addressing those needs as well.
Yep.
Yeah, you know, it's not on your list, David, but this strategy on monitoring the subsidized housing inventories still is pretty important, given all the potential expiring use units. And there needs to be some attention on that. So you know, I would not, maybe we fit it in somewhere else, but I think that's important to have some focus on that.
Well, to me, that's a good example. That is an administrative function that we have to do. But if we really want to have a blueprint for where the town is going, that sort of task shouldn't be at the same level as some of the priorities in the executive summary. So yes, absolutely keep it in, but treat it a little differently.
You know, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you, David, because I think we have a problem in this town with follow-through and with recognizing the staffing that's needed to do the follow-through. And so I would consider it a really high priority to make sure that we've thought through the whole process.
So maybe you put that in there generally as you use it as an example of like develop a strategy for maintaining, you know, and use that as example once the unit is built, how it is. So that they're kind of both. It's like a conceptual example that that Margot is referencing, but we're highlighting it as an important concept.
Well, I mean,
Well, is it a concept? Is it an action? Is it something, you know, I'm
It's an
getting
action.
confused
It's an
on,
action.
you know, I think the lingo on what we're talking about is strategies and then, you know, concepts. I don't
Christine
know.
says it's an action. I agree, I guess.
It's
Yeah.
an action. Strategies are actions, and the town, you know, needs to include as part of its housing agenda over the next few years.
No, I get it. I mean, for say, however many units, you know, North Line to be successful, I mean, there's been very thoughtful discussion in the community. How is this administered? What you're pointing, how is it maintained over time to be a attractive place to live and have the effect that we all want it to have? So,
and I'll just throw out another example for inclusionary zoning that has been brought up a couple
Yeah.
of times in the short time I've been here, but there's no monitoring agency, there are no support systems in place if and when the town does pass an inclusionary zoning bylaw. And not to say that you're gonna get an influx of units, but even if you got 2 or 3 units, who's monitoring?
You have the
this?
housing advocate now, who's full-time. That's a very good function for her.
Okay.
Perhaps we bring up the concept of governance as a
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Well, that's what I meant by capacity building. That's kind of local government structure systems.
Do you want to use the word governance maybe, because that's actually been being thrown around the community
Yeah,
a fair
we could do
bit.
that.
Yeah, use the word governance. Yep.
We could do that, and we could move the monitoring up to that category.
Yeah, because I think when it comes to the larger plan, I think we're going to lean heavily into that governance to make sure that whatever we put out there is tracked and followed. So this is a good place to introduce it.
That seems to have public sentiment support.
Good.
Barbara, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, sorry, Joyce.
No, thank you.
So I guess my reading through the report and looking at the tables and the number of people with the different economic capabilities and stuff, I see, with Pine Oaks and Marceline, we're looking at that as hopefully being potential to help the affordable housing situation in town. But then I hear, that's why I asked about the old Royal on Bank and Parallel, and some of the other places that they're not going to have affordable, or the West Harwich Schoolhouse, if they don't have affordable. I mean, is there really the population to afford market rate rentals at this point? I just don't see where the numbers add up as far as, we've got this many people with this salary and everything, they can afford rents up to this, and then at one point in the report, Karen had, I think, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 800 square foot house or condo or something, list rents for like $2,700 a month, and most people can only afford, $1,100 to $1,300 a month. I mean,
Right.
Is there going to be enough bodies available to be renting what they're doing on these other non-affordable? I guess I'm just concerned that the numbers are not going to shake out. We're going to have empty apartments sitting there, and is there something else? Is there some other part? Is there another game plan that we could put forward to getting some of these apartments to be, into the affordable program versus just market rate?
It's an interesting point of feedback, Barbara, because I read Karen's stuff, and that's not what I got out of it. I don't know, Karen, what to her question about the demographics, I got out of it that we need just more units, period. But Karen, what's your take?
No, you need some affordable. I mean,
Yeah.
There's, it goes back to that mismatch that you mentioned before. And as far as demand, I mean, other communities that have recently done lotteries for their rental units, they get hundreds of applicants.
Yes.
And of those, hundreds are from their community. I mean, the demand is there. I think that the Queen Anne Marceline property, the RFP, is moving in the right direction. I think the Pine Oaks projects are moving in the right direction, and they have various income tiers. And I think that's kind of a good recipe, even for home ownership in the community, is that there be a mix of incomes within the development. And it is becoming clear, though, market rate units are, they're very expensive.
Okay.
And so it's not getting better.
And this is the question that we don't quite have the public debate, or the public, what is the smart money on, can we say 200 AMI, right? Because then that's what you're sort of saying. Then then that becomes you were saying that's market rate, but then we're not quite willing to
That's
quote.
market rate.
Yeah, we're not really willing to subsidize to market rate. So here is the difficult question, I guess you're highlighting, Barbara.
In fact, the market rate should help subsidize the other units. I mean,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, I think that actually the 120% cutoff is a pretty realistic one where it makes sense to subsidize. I mean, even Martha's Vineyard, they're not going, well, they've gone up to 140% at some point.
Karen,
That's
can
an
you
example.
explain
and
that?
we've included those examples in the housing plan.
Karen, can you explain that statement where you said market rate should subsidize the other units? What does that mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the whole point of Chapter 40B, for example. is that the market rents crop-subsidize the affordable ones and therefore make the integration of the affordable units financially feasible.
Okay.
So there is the ability of market rate units because, market rates are pretty high, the values are there to help support the whole project when you want to get big affordability gaps.
I.e.
You need more
via
subsidies
via
to
tax?
down.
Is that
You
right?
need some density and economies of scale, but they can't support.
No, in terms of the
lower level.
development cost. In other words, you
The infrastructure around it.
well, just
To develop it.
building the building, doing the whole development.
In the balanced, in the
Yeah,
mixed
yeah.
use. Got it. Okay. I was thinking more in the lines of market rate units that were individual households.
I thought they were talking about.
And there was
too.
either a fee or a tax associated in those
No,
programs,
no.
or just because of the natural cost of those, the incomes that they're getting from property
Yeah.
taxes. So, okay, cool.
My last, you're prepared for this, Karen, but it might be actually for us to know this information because I can anticipate. I got minimally my finger on the pulse on social media, listening to. There's been some projects that have come online, like in Yarmouth and Dennis, that are pretty. We all drive by all the time. I've heard people say, and I don't know if this is true, but I can anticipate this would be a question asked. What is to prevent, families that have no ties in the Cape, but housing lotteries, like being lotteried into these units, like say at Marceline or Pine Oaks? There's a lot of I don't know if it's accurate or not. I don't know anything about it, but it's and some of it rings of xenophobia, but if we're going to do this and quote, subsidize it or maybe give up our field or whatever, we want it to benefit members of our community. I don't know, what's the best speaking points around that?
Well, if it's a 40B development, up to 70% of the units can be classified as local preference units. They would be set aside in a separate pool in a lottery for those who live, work, or have children in local schools. That's at initial occupancy.
Okay, I just can anticipate that being some grumpy pants question, from the audience.
It sounds like that takes care of it, though.
So
Put
there
it
is a
aside.
way of and this is a simplistic question, but something like the Marceline project is a 40B project.
Yeah. No, it'll have a separate pool for those who meet the local preference criteria. Up to 70% of the units can be reserved for those in the local preference pool. Moreover, everybody in the local preference pool is eligible for being included as well in the open pool. So they get an extra boost.
Got it.
Potentially get.
How in these projects, this is my last question, we're out of time. In these projects, in your experience, is that really a thing that because it's anecdotally talked about?
It's a thing.
Anecdotally, the negative of it I've heard, and people beat on this drum they came from wherever, Worcester. I'll wail on Worcester because I work in Worcester. They came from Worcester and they don't want to be on the Cape and it's too expensive to live here, but this is where they assigned an apartment. Is that really a thing?
I think there is some, misinformation, not so much on 40Bs, but on public housing.
Right.
Because they have the centralized wait list, that people from New York can apply. Let's say
no. We can wail on Worcester. I don't mind.
Yeah. But because the units are barely turnover and there's so few, they only get down to emergency cases, and or veterans. I mean, they hardly even get to the local people because there's such a long wait list and priorities actually take effect.
Just
For
might
40Bs, you know, it just doesn't happen. I've seen lotteries. People aren't flying from far away.
Okay,
For those,
okay.
And,
You might, you know, that may be
I
because
haven't seen it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
haven't seen it.
I've just heard that used to put down some affordable housing projects, like say in Yarmouth, and it didn't ring true to me either. But just anticipating, maybe people have heard that. So
No, Yarmouth has had a couple of projects where, I mean, it's been amazing, the number of applicants.
Right, I know.
The number of
I know.
applicants from, who
Town.
live in Yarmouth.
yes.
They more than met their 70%. Yeah, hundreds. Anyway, well, you guys have been great.
Oh.
I've got a lot to work with here, and then we'll have more when we have the meeting next Tuesday. And then
Put our big girl
I'll be
pants on.
updating revising the draft. I'll track the changes so you can see them, and then you can digest them, and then the next step is we need to have a meeting. We need to get the approvals from the planning board and the select board. And we need, as part of one of those meetings, at least if there's not a joint meeting, have some kind of public opportunity to comment. So there needs to be some kind of a public forum, public hearing.
And that's separate from what's going on Tuesday. So there's going to be something public in between.
That's separate.
Okay.
That's a separate. The stakeholders meeting is something that the select board recommended for those people, those representatives of various boards and committees or housing entities, the
Right.
implementers have a chance to weigh in, have a dialogue about the priorities and be able to comment. So it's not a community meeting.
Got it.
It's the stakeholders meeting.
So do you expect a big crowd?
No.
No.
No, it's not gonna be a huge crowd, but we did invite many of the local and regional housing groups as
Yeah.
well
Do you-
as other town boards.
Hopefully there'll be
in
some
addition
good
to that.
attendance.
Do you want it to be? I'm happy to. Do you want me to post it on the Old Timers, or would you prefer not?
No.
No. I wouldn't.
Okay.
Because this is really supposed to be
This is
an
not
opportunity
this
for
is not a
decision
resident
makers to
community
have
meeting. This is,
Got
dialogue.
Got it. Got it.
So,
that's helpful.
It's funny, you know, my wife went to something on ponds, 150 people there. It's interesting what people.
So I get. I was there in
Were you
executive
there?
session.
I might be exaggerating, but there are a lot of people.
No, there were a lot of people
So
there.
it's really for decision makers and decision makers,
Okay.
as well as housing professionals to come into a room and talk about issues or
Okay.
challenges. And it's just an opportunity to have an exchange and a dialogue.
Got it.
Particularly
Right.
relative to, while, you know, we're still sort of
Yeah.
prioritizing the strategies and the goals.
Okay, that's super helpful. Then I will.
This discussion will help facilitate or inform some of, you know, as we finalize this document.
Okay.
yeah.
So there'll be time for everybody later. I got it. Got it.
Christine, is that gonna be online or not?
As of right now, I don't believe it's gonna be online. I don't think we have the capability to put it online, but I'm still trying, I'm gonna follow up with Channel 18 on that.
Yeah,
So
you know,
right
it's-
now, the
these
answer is
meetings
no.
tend to be kind of insular.
Yes, that's a helpful clarification. Thank you. High level exchange. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Good.
All right, guys.
Thank you, Karen, so much. We appreciate you so much. Keep up the fight.
And we'll if I don't see you next Tuesday, I'll see you the next time. We'll figure it out.
Thank you, Karen, so much. All right. Good night.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
People love their ponds.